All right, so it's Hate Alabama Week or Beat Alabama Week, whatever you want to call it. And Oklahoma's latest availability report, injury report, whatever you want to call it. Listen, the initial one's out, and it could be good news for Oklahoma in terms of who's going to be suiting up against Alabama. Brent Venables, he might be having to dig in his bag a little bit, especially with what we heard in practice from a specific player. We're going to dive into all of that today, though. Before we do it, as always, join the discussion. Jump in the comments below. Give me your thoughts. The question I got for y'all today is, will Jackson Arnold throw for more than 250 yards in this game? Because if you're Oklahoma, you need Jackson Arnold to step up in a big way. If you're new to the channel and you haven't already, make sure you hit that like, hit the subscribe button. But we're going to talk about it, right? So Brent Venables releases this player availability report, which is required now for SEC play. And it's kind of sad looking at it and seeing Alabama only has 3 players on this list and Oklahoma has a ton, right? And you kind of wonder, like, all right, what's Alabama doing? Because we want to replicate that so that we can keep guys on the field all throughout the season. But as always, you're seeing your usual offenders on this list: Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, Andrell Anthony, Gentry Williams, Kendall Dolby, Gary Hatchett. We obviously expected probably Jacob Sexton and Taylor not play for the rest of the season. So those are guys that have been on this list. They've been listed as out for a while. Those aren't a surprise. We see Deion Burks listed as doubtful, and after the hit that he took against Missouri, which still to this day have not figured out how that wasn't targeting, you would imagine still in concussion protocol, won't be out of it this week to play Bama. Javante Barnes listed as questionable. Now, this one's really big because remember, he had that really big game against Maine, and he's probably been one of your best running backs of the season. But I think kind of looking at, okay, he's listed as questionable. What does this mean for Oklahoma? Well, in the practice interviews that, Sooner Scoop or 247 Sports puts out, Xavier Robinson was the guy that was interviewed during one of the practices this week, talking about how he's not going to be redshirting. So you would imagine if a guy like Xavier Robinson is going to be getting more run in the season, one, he should because he's really good. But two, that might allude to Javante Barnes might not be back and fully ready to go yet. So that's something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, right? Does Javante Barnes get upgraded? And then you've got Joshua Bates listed as questionable as well in the offensive line. Not super worried there because you have Troy Everett as your starting center, and then I would assume Branson Hickman's ready to go to play backup center if something was to happen there. So one thing you notice, though, on this list from the compared to the Missouri one that we had, Gavin Sawchuk's not on the list. So I'm assuming he's going to play. Jalil Farouk is not on this list, and it sounds like maybe he might be getting more touches this week because, well, he's been on a snap count, and I'm assuming he's still going to be on a snap count, but it might be elevated this week because he's had a couple weeks to get that foot just a little bit healthier. So that's always good news, right? And then additionally, you don't see Michael Tarquin on the list. So you would assume Michael Tarquin's in. He would be potentially starting, and that would mean your offensive line's probably going to look like Michael Tarquin, Fabechi Wewu, Troy Everett, Keith Ozida, and Logan Howland, which realistically over the past 2 weeks has been a pretty decent offensive line for you the majority of the time. Obviously, these offensive linemen, they still have their busts. So good news there. And then kind of looking at, what Oklahoma fans should expect this week, right? So Xavier Robinson, a guy that was interviewed in the post-practice. This was a guy that against Missouri, if you were not watching that game and you live under a rock, played really well. Like that last drive that he had for Oklahoma, he ran the ball really well. And he was a guy that was just, it felt like it was hard for them to be able to go in there and bring him down. And then it seems like he also catches the ball out of the backfield well. So going to be really interested to see how much more run he gets this rest of the season, because right now he's at 15 carries, 85 yards, and 1 touchdown. And again, it does not sound like he is going to be redshirted this season. So we're gonna have to watch what happens there, but then also what happens with Gavin Sawchuk. The scheme that Seth Luttrell was running was just not fit for Gavin Sawchuk's abilities. And so understanding that Joe John Finley and Kevin Johns are going to be calling more of a similar Jeff Lebby type offense, you would imagine we're going to see a hopefully see a similar Gavin Sawchuk to what we saw last year when Gavin Sawchuk had, what was it, like 6 100-yard games? That's what I would be expecting, and that's what I'm hoping to potentially see out of him, especially if a guy like Javante Barnes is not ready to go. And then, of course, you'll have Taylor Tatum right there as well, who's another true freshman that's just been a standout for Oklahoma. You would just hope that he could hold on to the ball a little bit better. But looking at this game, and, not to dive too much into it, another guy that's not on the injury report that is got to be a big impact, Jalil Farouk. So he was on a snap count against Missouri, reason why we didn't see him a ton. But you would imagine that with Deion Burks probably not being out there and Jalil Farouk being one of those only 5 wide receivers going to be available for Jackson Arnold, it potentially could be a little easier for Jackson Arnold to see the field and not have to be looking for both guys. And he's had a bye week to practice with Jalil Farouk as well. So I think part of the thing that I saw in the Missouri game that kind of I think might have been an issue for Arnold was you were just kind of implementing these guys back into the offense cold turkey, right? I don't think there was a lot of time for Jackson Arnold to redevelop chemistry or, re-find out like, all right, here's where these guys are going to be. Having an off week to practice with Jalil Farouk, right? Learn this is where he's going to be within the route when I look. I think that's going to be tremendous for Jackson Arnold. And I think you're going to see a significant improvement of targets to Jalil Farouk this weekend, especially if he's got a higher snap count in this game. And then looking at the offensive line, right? So last week, or 2 weeks ago against Missouri, we had to start Spencer Brown. And a lot of Oklahoma fans are not high on Spencer Brown. He actually didn't play too terrible. He had a couple of busts, but on the whole, when you look at it, didn't play terrible. And getting a guy like Michael Tarquin in, though, to re-stabilize that position could be big, because that's a guy that maybe Jackson Arnold trusts a little bit more to have his back. Obviously, he's not covering the blind side. That's going to be Logan Howland's position. But you're not going to have Alabama line up their best players against Tarquin like they might have against Spencer Brown. So how the offensive line plays this week with Tarquin implemented in it, I think that's going to be huge. But Tarquin is a nice piece to have back, and it's good news not to see him on this injury report or availability report, whatever you want to call it. So, as I said, I want to hear from y'all. Make sure you guys join the discussion. Jump down in the comments below. Give me your thoughts. Does Jackson Arnold throw for more than 250 yards in this game? Because that's got to be one of the major keys for Oklahoma to be able to pull off an upset in Norman. Additionally, if you are new to the channel and you guys have not already, make sure you guys go ahead and hit that like and you hit that subscribe button.